Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Got a number of people just jumping online here, so wanted to say a word of welcome and thanks so much for taking the time to join today's conversation. All right, good morning again. See, the numbers are kind of leveling off for a moment, so I'll go ahead and say a very warm welcome and good morning to you all as we join together for today's webinar. This is our latest in a series of 30 by 30 partnership conversations. We've done a number of these that are Pathways in Focus webinars, and today's is on Pathway 4, which is enhancing the conservation of existing public lands and coastal waters. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, hello, my name's Sean Johnson. I'm at the University of Montana, and I'm really honored to be a partner with California Natural Resources Agency and the 30 by 30 partnership in helping support conversations across the state that do exactly what we're doing today, bringing people together to share stories, to build knowledge, and to advance together towards the 30 by 30 goal that the state has set. As you get settled, I'd invite you to say a quick hello in the chat. And so we've got both the chat and the Q&A functions today, and we're going to be encouraging you to use both of those. In the chat, I just invite you to say hello, maybe where you're joining us from today. And most importantly, if you have a 30 by 30 related hope or goal for 2024, we'd love to hear that. So as we're getting settled into 2024, what's on your mind when it comes to 30 by 30? What's a hope you have, a goal you have for the coming year? So please go ahead and jump over into the chat, share that, and also just a hello and where you're joining us from. We're glad to have you here. As we turn to today's conversation, I wanted to convey how excited I am for today's conversation. This is one of the pathways that I've been particularly excited about because it's about how we work together to steward, enhance, preserve, connect conversations and people across really diverse landscapes, focusing on public lands and coastal waters. And we've got a particularly exciting conversation lined up for today, starting with some opening remarks from Secretary Wade Crowfoot. And so, Devin, just going to have you share the roadmap. There we go. And then we'll hear some introductory remarks from two of California Natural Resources Agency's deputy secretaries. So delighted to have Sarah Amanzada and Geneva Thompson with us today. They're going to share some of the critical insights that they're seeing from their perspective of what does it really take to work with these diverse partners, with federal partners, with tribal partners, across state agencies, with all of you gathered today to advance these conversations. And then to the heart of today's discussion, which is really around potential national monument designations and expansions, and just really excited about the panelists that have joined us today. We'll be introducing them shortly, and they've all got really compelling, interesting, and insightful comments to share their stories, their interests, where they are in the conversation around different monuments across the state. And so we'll be traveling the state actually from north to south as we hear their stories. And then we're going to have a conversation with them that's going to be co-facilitated by Sarah and Geneva. Throughout, we encourage you to watch the chat. We're going to share a few resources in there. You can share any updates or exciting events that are happening in your neck of the woods as they pertain to 30 by 30 as we go. And then if you have any questions for our speakers, especially our panelists as we go, I'd invite you to jump over to the Q&A box, which is also at the bottom of your screen, and share any specific questions that you might have there. I think that's it in terms of the roadmap. We'll close today with some final remarks and some updates from Assistant Secretary Madeline Drake, and just a final word of thanks for your time joining us today. As a reminder, this is being recorded, and the recording will be posted shortly after the webinar on California Natural Resources page at California Nature. and just encourage you to continue to share these stories and this message with everyone in your networks. With that, delighted to start today's webinar with Secretary Crowfoot. So Wade, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sean, thanks so much, and Happy New Year, everybody. Really exciting to be with you, and it's fun to read the chat and understand just the diversity of people and leaders that we have here today. My job is twofold. First of all, I want to thank the tribal leaders who are sharing with us 4 proposals for either the expansion of an existing national monument or the creation of a brand new national monument. I've said before, but it's important for me to always repeat that in California, we are on a journey to strengthen our tribal partnerships, to learn from tribal leaders and tribal governments and communities about how better to steward our environment. Because after all, it's California's Native American communities that have been taking care of our environment since time immemorial. So I think it's fitting that these 4 proposals to protect lands are led by California Native American tribes. The second purpose of my introductory remarks are just to put a little context on the discussion here today. Many of you are really engaged in this movement called 30 by 30 in California. Others may not be, so I want to provide some context. Many groups across California have championed this idea of protecting almost a third of California, 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030, which we know as 30 by 30. That advocacy led Governor Newsom almost 3 years ago to issue an executive order setting our administration's policy to do just that. What followed was President Biden establishing a 30 by 30 commitment for the entire United States. And then a year later, actually, nations across the world coming together through the United Nations, establishing a 30 by 30 commitment. I should mention that our legislative leaders have been really strong on this, and last year codified or passed a state law, essentially codifying that 30 by 30 commitment into our state laws. So we're really excited that California has made this commitment, and we're really excited that as California goes, so goes the world. I'm very proud that you and so many of us worked really hard on this roadmap to achieve 30 by 30, which we call Pathways to 30 by 30. And as Sean mentioned, there are 10 pathways or concurrent streams of work that we've identified that will help us achieve this goal. One of those pathways, pathway number 4, is enhancing conservation on federal lands. California is a big state, about 104 million acres. Believe it or not, almost half of those lands are owned and managed by the federal government. And that's in our 18 national forests, of course, our national parks, our lands that are operated by the Bureau or managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and more. So if we're going to actually achieve this 30 by 30 goal, we have to focus on enhancing conservation on federal lands. The other key point in our Pathways document is our commitment to strengthen tribal partnerships and to follow the lead of tribes on improving stewardship of lands across our state. And we're really excited that we're working on that in a number of different levels, including ancestral land return, actually helping tribes regain control of their original homelands in ways that build their tribal sovereignty and enhance environmental conservation. So that really brings us to the issue du jour, which are national monuments. Some of you may know that there's a law that's been the law of the land across our country for well over 100 years called the Antiquities Act. And that allows our president to designate lands as national monuments, specifically to protect culturally sensitive and environmentally sensitive lands in perpetuity for future generations to enjoy. And the Antiquities Act has been invoked by most every president, starting with Theodore Roosevelt, to protect those federal lands owned and managed by the federal government that are culturally important, in some cases sacred, are environmentally sensitive, that need to be protected. And in California, we have almost 20 existing national monuments. And it's been a really effective way to protect really important places in California. So today we'll hear from four tribal leaders that are talking about the movement, the campaigns to either expand two national monuments that exist today that were established under President Obama, and then establish two brand new national monuments to protect critically important lands to these tribes and to all of us as Californians. I'm really excited about this, as is Governor Newsom. I've been back to Washington, D.C. on the governor's behalf twice already to advocate for these proposals, to support tribal leaders driving these proposals forward. And we're really hopeful that this president, President Biden, Vice President Harris, will act on these four proposals in coming months. So thanks for everybody, to everybody for all the work that you're doing on 30 by 30, on land conservation, on supporting tribal leadership. And I'm really excited today to hear more from our tribal leaders about the status of each of these proposals and why it's so important for all of us to do whatever we can to make the case to President Biden to protect these lands through national monument status. Back to you, Sean.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. That was a great overview of the importance of this pathway, how that fits within the broader framework of the 10 different pathways that the state is pursuing, really exemplifying California's leadership across the 30 by 30 initiative, and particularly as it relates to Pathway 4. I also really appreciate unpacking the Antiquities Act a little bit and how that connects back to today's conversation on national monuments. With that, I'm excited to introduce Deputy Secretary Sarah Amanzada, who's going to carry us into the next part of our conversation here. Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And I want to give a quick shout out and kudos to Secretary Crowfoot. He really goes above and beyond. He's super passionate about the monuments work and has flown all over the state to visit these areas, participate in the launches, and talk with all of you who have been leading this movement for decades. So it's a really exciting time, and I'm very hopeful that in 2024 we could see multiple monuments expanded and designated. I serve as Deputy Secretary for External Affairs for the California Natural Resources Agency. And in this role, I work closely with our federal partners to advance shared state and federal priorities, which includes the state's 30 by 30 goal and also the federal government's America the Beautiful initiative. I have also had the chance to visit all of these monuments and to meet with all of you who have been my mentors and teachers over the past months about the importance of these beautiful places from a cultural perspective, from a biodiversity perspective, and from a historical perspective. So I want to extend my gratitude to each of you for that work. I also had the chance to be in Washington, D.C. last March when President Biden designated the Aviqua May Monument. So I've seen it happen, and I'm hoping to continue working with all of you to see it happen for these wonderful monuments here in California. This will require continued vision, coordination, and care to really advance the meaningful conversations around national monument designations, not only within our state and leaders working at all levels of government, but also in Washington, D.C., with the White House and with the federal agencies who will be our partners in this work. I'll be co-moderating this panel today with Geneva E.B. Thompson, our Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs. So before we talk with our panelists, I'm going to turn it over to Geneva to share more about the work that we are doing to strengthen tribal partnerships, a core commitment of advancing 30 by 30. Geneva, over to you.
Well, Wado, and thank you, Sarah. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. And just to echo the thanks that Sarah expressed for all of the leadership and hard work that's gone into these national monument proposals. It is a true pleasure to be part of this and see all of the work that tribal leaders and community leaders have been taking in to make these national monument proposals a reality. As introduced, my name is Geneva E.B. Thompson. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, she, her pronouns, and I have the honor of serving as the first ever Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs at the California Natural Resources Agency. And as Secretary Crowfoot highlighted, a big part of what we're hoping to do here at the agency, and a huge component of my role here at the agency, is to identify and support opportunities to strengthen partnerships with California Native American tribes, not only across the agency's work, but with our partners across the state. I joined the agency shortly after Governor Newsom issued his Nature-Based Solutions Executive Order, and have had the opportunity and the pleasure of consulting and meeting with over 70 different California Native American tribes on the development of the Pathways to 30 by 30 strategy. And I think that out of all of these consultations, there was a key takeaway and a key interest in ensuring that meaningful tribal partnerships is built throughout the 30 by 30 work, and that tribal priorities are key components to our shared goals of conserving 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030. And so with this in mind and understanding the importance of partnering with tribes, that is a key component to the 30 by 30 strategy and built into all of the different pathways throughout the goals of our 30 by 30. A question I get a lot from non-tribal entities is what do we mean when we say tribal partnerships, and how do we shift practices towards those meaningful tribal partnerships in the work of 30 by 30. And tribal partnerships can take many forms, but are all based in early, often, and meaningful tribal consultation and collaboration. These partnerships can include ancestral land return, co-management and co-stewardship of shared places, increased and protected tribal access and use of lands, waters, and natural resources, contracting with tribes on restoration and management projects, increasing job and capacity trainings and opportunities for tribal youth to be part of the conservation work and the restoration and protection of these important places, increasing protection of tribal cultural resources, and understanding and respecting tribal knowledges, including traditional ecological knowledge, as well as other deep place-based knowledges that tribal governments and tribal cultural practitioners have in these spaces, and so much more. Like the possibilities for tribal partnership are endless, and really is dependent on those strong partnerships and collaboration and working closely with tribal leaders and cultural practitioners across the state. So again, I just wanted to express Wado and thank you to the tribal leaders who are joining us today and for your tribe's work in advancing the national monuments proposals, not only for the conservation benefits, but also to advocate for stronger protections of tribal cultural resources, meaningful co-stewardship, and tribal access and use of the lands and natural resources. Your leadership and your tribe's vision and drive for this work is so essential and so important in advocating for these national monument proposals, and really are beautiful examples of how we can collectively partner in the protection of these important places. So again, I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to be here with you all today, looking forward to the conversation, and I will hand it back to Sarah, who can kick off introductions of our panelists.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are going to start in the northern part of the state and work our way down. So I'd like us to start today with Brandy McDaniels from the Pit River Tribe. She is the lead for the Sadatila National Monument Campaign, and she will be speaking today about the beautiful proposed Medicine Lake Highlands Monument designation. So Brandy, over to you. Please introduce yourself and also share what is so special about this place.
Tumisungwi. My name is Brandy McDaniels. I am a citizen of the Pit River Nation and the Madesi Band cultural representative for my band. I have also been appointed by the Pit River Tribal Council to be the lead on the Satitla National Monument campaign. Satitla is located in northeastern California in Modoc and Siskiyou County and lies within the Modoc, Klamath, and Siskiyou and Shasta Trinity National Forest. That's three national forests it lies in. Culturally, Satitla, which is commonly known as the Medicine Lake Highlands, has been a sacred landscape to the people of the Pitt River Nation since time immemorial, as well as being recognized as sacred to countless other tribes near and far. To us, this is a sacred landscape that is the actual location of the creation narrative of our people, and the landscape tells that narrative of our people. So it's very important to us. Due to this, the water, the flora, the fauna, down to the tiniest blade of grass or fleck of sand are instilled with incredible sacred power as all needed for the sensory experience required to fulfill sacred ceremonies and rites of passage still performed by my people today in numerous and countless ways. It's very difficult to describe in the English language how important culturally this landscape is to the indigenous people who belong to it, as we see ourselves as being one with the land, and one cannot be separated from the other and still be a whole and healthy person mentally, physically, and spiritually without the other. So it is for these reasons that it is imperative that this special place be protected, and is the reason why we have been fighting to defend and protect Satitla and the astounding resources it holds for decades and beyond. But besides Satitla's well-documented and known importance to us as Indigenous people, there are incredible resources and values that Satitla provides to this and other far-reaching regions. In addition to it being culturally, historically, ecologically, and scientifically important, Satitla is crucial for the health of millions of people, wildlife, and plants, serving as one of California's headwaters. The aquifers beneath these lands deliver clean, cold water to Fall River, the state's largest spring system. The freshwater springs not only provide a buffer from increasing drought and serve as a buffer to climate change, but are also key to ensuring enough drinking water for major metropolitan areas downstream and for agricultural needs as well. Satitla is geologically significant, containing the Medicine Lake volcano, which is a shield volcano and the largest volcano by volume in the Cascade Range. The underlying aquifer stores an enormous volume of pure water resources. It captures and releases over 1 million feet of precipitation annually, being reliable even in drought years due to its huge storage capacity. Its waters travel the very complex and fragile aquifer to emerge 30 miles away as the Fall River Springs, the largest spring-fed system in California and one of the largest in the nation. Its waters travel via the Pitt River to Shasta Lake and are released via the Shasta Dam, where these waters are renamed the Sacramento River, where they then run to our ocean. In addition, into the California Aqueduct to be carried to the farthest reaches of Southern California. These precious waters support endangered animal and plant species here and downstream habitats, ecosystems, and fisheries. The large volumes of nutrient-rich, cold spring waters are essential for trout populations. This is a healing place, not only for my people, but is recognized as such internationally. We look forward to a national monument designation for this important place and co-stewardship, in addition to our efforts to get an outstanding national resource water designation to protect these important waters and resources from the ongoing threats against it. Sula, I am very grateful and thankful to be able to share just a little tiny bit, not just a little tiny bit, about this really important, place for not only my people, but as you could see, really the state of California and the world. Thank you so much. Sesulaya.
You so much, Brandy. I had the opportunity to visit with Brandy and experience this beautiful area, and I can't say enough about how special it is. With that, I would now like to welcome Sandy Schubert, the Executive Director from Tuolumne. She will be speaking on the proposed expansion for the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah said, I'm Sandy Schubert. I'm the Executive Director of Tuolumne, and it is such an honor to be asked to participate on this panel. Tuolumne is a nonprofit based in Woodland, but we work on advocacy and active stewardship throughout the Northern Intercoastal Range. At the heart of this is Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, anchored in the north by Snow Mountain and in the south by Berryessa Mountain. We are working to add Malakaloyak to Berryessa Snow Mountain. Malakaloyak is a nearly 21,000 acre ridge of public lands administered by BLM. 13,753 acres of this adjoins but is outside of the eastern edge of Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument. Malakaloyak is Patwin for Condor Ridge and is a name provided by the Yochadihi Winton Nation, who have led this effort and with whom we work very closely. Currently, the area is referred to as Walker Ridge. Malakaloyak is a microcosm of the monument itself and just as unique. The expansion of the monument would safeguard lands that are sacred to Indigenous peoples who have been on these lands for 20,000 years and that are critically important to protect in the face of a changing climate. Malakaloyak is Patwin heartland and central to their origin stories. It is also significant to Pomo, Wapo, and Miwok peoples. Trails across Malakaloyak link these tribes to each other into the wider region of trade and cultural exchange throughout the region, connecting Clear Lake to the Sacramento Valley and inland areas to the coast. Indigenous people came from all directions to its springs for ceremonies and healings. Plants of Malakaloyak, such as McNabb cypress, are used for ceremonies, tools, and medicines. Patwin territory stretched from the west side of Sacramento River through the eastern part of the Northern California coast ranges. It included Hill Patwin, River Patwin, and Southern Patwin peoples. Neighboring tribes included Pomo people near Clear Lake and north of Malakaloyak, Miwok near Clear Lake, and Wapo people to the southeast. Much of this area is also within the monument. Malakaloyak is within or overlaps with Patwin, Wapo, Lake Miwok, and Pomo territory or travel routes. The Patwin, like many of the Indigenous people in the area, settled in areas of maximum environmental advantage. Streams in the hills are typically not year-round, so springs determine places of settlement. The numerous springs support human, animal, and plant life. The area supported multiple villages directly and multiple villages nearby. A high concentration that shows the environmental and cultural importance of the area. Underpinning all this is the geology of the region, where the meeting of two tectonic plates is literally revealed underfoot and in the scenery. You can see where the plates meet and the difference in soils, rocks, and species. Geologists come to study this area to understand tectonic dynamics and to see the enormous swath of serpentinite, former mantle from beneath the seafloor that tells the story how California was assembled. Also, it's our state rock. The geology is inextricably tied to the uniqueness of Malakaloyak's natural and scenic wonders. The photo on the right you see is a view from Condor Ridge of the sun setting through Gray Pines. There's serpentinite bedrock exposed in the front, and Mount Konocti is just to the left or south of the setting sun. Malakaloyak contains two areas of critical environmental concern and abuts the Walker Ridge ACEC. Malakaloyak is a place of scientific and natural wonder for botanists and wildflower enthusiasts, containing nearly 40 rare and/or endemic species. People come to see and study its rare flowers, wildflower displays, and the intricate beauty of McNabb cypress. It has the largest remaining stand of McNabb cypress in California. Its unique geothermal springs are critical to the surrounding area, feeding unique soils and those of the adjoining Bear Valley, resulting in wildflower displays that if you haven't seen, they are breathtaking and you should see. The north-south trending ridge's unusual and valuable hydrology has springs, wetlands, and permanent streams from the ridge top to its flanks. These areas provide habitat for sensitive species and corridors for wildlife migration and enhanced connectivity, such as between the Cache Creek Wilderness Area and the northern part of the monument. And if you see the left one, that's wildflowers on Malakloyak, and it's one of the most stunning pictures I've seen. The ridge also provides spectacular views from Mount Diablo in the south to Mount Shasta in the north, from Clear Lake in the west to the Sierra Nevada in the east. The summit is a sacred place to the tribes in the area, providing views in all four ordinal directions. The proposed expansion would also help improve access to the outdoors for the region's residents. Malakloyak lies off Highway 20, the only east-west road through the entire monument. Although adding the unprotected 13,753 acres to the monument will also allow this area to be managed as a consistent unit, establishing historic tribal co-management and renaming the area in Lake and Colusa counties to Malakloyak would honor this area's immense cultural significance to Native Americans and enhance the protection of its natural, historic, scenic, and cultural resources. It would preserve its scenic value and its value for research. Co-management and use of traditional ecological knowledge would improve the health of the area's ecosystem. And it's my understanding BLM is already in discussions with multiple tribes about these issues. Adding Malakloyak to the monument would permanently protect an extraordinary amount of history, geology, flora, fauna, and cultural resources. Protecting this land honors its cultural importance, conserves its biodiversity, increases equitable access, and contributes to the federal and state climate and 30 by 30 goals. And I must say, I've been honored to be a partner with the Yochadihi Winton Nation, who have been the leaders in this effort, both when we were moving it as legislation and trying to get a proclamation declared by the president. It has just been an honor to work with them in the entire coalition. So thank you for giving me time to speak about this amazing place.
Wado, Sandy, I really appreciate you sharing about Monoluk. And I know I was such an honor to be able to visit and see such a beautiful landscape, and really appreciate yours and the coalition's leadership, as well as the Yochadihi Wintu Nation's leadership in this proposal. I would now like to welcome President Rudy Ortega Jr. from the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians to share a bit more about the proposed San Gabriel Mountains National Monument expansion. I will hand the mic to you, President Ortega.
Thank you for that. Hello, everyone. I'm Rudy Ortega Jr., the tribal president for the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. We're a tribe just north of Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, and we're here to talk about the monument of the San Gabriel Mountains, which is just north of the Los Angeles Basin. So we're excited and proud about this project and to protect 109 acres of property that encompasses 3 traditional villages of my tribe. That also the tribes that use these lands are that predate what is known as mission tribes, as Fernandino, Gabrielino, and Venturino, Chumash, so the traditional areas. And so the history of California, Los Angeles, as many know, tribal people have been dealt with the worst end of the stick. And access to traditional territories and properties for ceremony was prohibited and not allowed. So this monument brings a different tone for us to have a conversation to further protect these areas. We know that protecting the environment is a crucial point. 30% of Los Angeles water comes from these mountains. So to further protect it, to make sure the clear and pristine water continues to flow, protect the endangered species that live in there, over 22 endangered species that are in the Los Angeles forest, native plants and animal species, to further advance their livelihood. But with that, the importance of protecting the cultural significant areas, the village of Tahanga or Tukuhananga, the village of Tominanga, and the village of Mukuhanga. These areas that, one, we know the village of Tahanga, we have descendants that are enrolled in our tribe today. and to continue to go back and tell the stories of these areas, continue practicing ceremony. So it's a way that we can bring people from Los Angeles and across the area to come to these lands of 109 acres to enjoy the natural scenery and to further enhance and protect the environmental species and the environment itself. Preservation and conservation for tribal people has began since the time immemorial of tribes. And I find that for us to have the engagement conversation is important and to have that protection continue pouring through. So we're looking forward for this, and we're asking President Biden to enhance and expand the monument. We already have the northern portion of the Angeles Forest in the monument, but to have this further expansion continue through, but the proper engagement with tribes, proper engagement to have tribes have conversations about the usage of these lands. And for my tribe, to share that my tribe is non-federally recognized, to have that inclusiveness in order to go back to these areas and continue to practice ceremonial, and also having the conversation to further enhance the protection of the native species that are in danger. So it's just like those species that were in danger, our tribal people were also in danger. And so that's why it's important that we protect these open spaces, not just for the general public to share that surrounds the area of, there's 4 valleys, San Fernando Valley, Santa Cruz Valley, and Antelope Valley, of the residents and the population of Los Angeles of 12 million people that can enjoy these areas. But how do we have a better infrastructure so they don't damage the area as well? And allowing for tribes to, again, can't emphasize it enough, to go into the mountains and practice ceremony and cultural practice that generations can continue to learn. So that's what we're here, and that's what we're enhancing and moving forward of these resources, and making sure that the monument speaks volumes of not just moving it into a protectionist state, but also the inclusion and having conversation with tribes. So I give my time there now. Move it back to you. So thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Wado, President Ortega, really appreciate Fernandino and Tautivi and Band of Mission Indians leadership in this space and for sharing a bit today. Now I would like to welcome our final panelist, Chairperson Thomas Tortes Jr. of the Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla for the proposed Chuckwalla National Monument designation. Welcome, Chair Tortes. And thank you for joining us.
Very good. Thank you, Geneva. I think I don't see myself on here, but okay. There we are. So good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Torres Jr. I'm the Tribal Council Chairman for the Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla, located in the Imperial and Riverside counties. We were once a mighty nation, a couple hundred years ago within this area, in Southern California, able to migrate and survive and thrive within the area here. Over, close to 100,000 strong at one time or other, living with the environment. The Salton Sea, as everyone knows, is an event that comes and goes every few hundred years. And not only that, the land, the environment here, as everyone knows, their cultural. Everyone talks about religion. Well, these are religious, environmental areas for every tribe that spoke before me. So with the Cahuilla, we're talking about the designation of the Chuckwalla Monument, which is the land that spans from Palm Springs all the way to the Colorado River. This area, when we're talking about what the significance is for the Cahuilla, goes back just like the other tribal leaders said here, time immemorial. Our stories go back as far as we remember from this area. This is where we were born. This is where we were created. When we're talking about Chuckwalla, again, right where the Chuckwalla Monument begins here in the Coachella Valley is where our creation stories begin. There are many stories that we sing in our bird songs. We pass down orally, tradition to generation after generation. It's just like any other tribe. So we're trying to protect this area by having the president designate this area as the Chuckwalla National Monument. And I'm hearing that it's also culturally relevant to all of the other tribal leaders here. So we support all of the tribal leaders and all of the designations that are advocated here today. So our goal as far as Torres Martinez is to get this monument of 660,000 acres that reaches from, like I said, Coachella Valley to the Colorado River. And the Joshua Tree National Park north of the Chocolate Mountains. The proposed monument stretches throughout public lands, and it's primarily south of the Interstate 10 as you're going from Palm Springs to Arizona. So this would protect 17,000 acres of public lands that are adjacent to the east side of the Joshua Tree National Monument. The National Park Service has studied this proposed expansion and has indicated that it would be feasible to incorporate the area into the park. The goal is for President Biden, as we've said before, and as Secretary said here, to use the Antiquities Act to designate these national monuments, all that were advocated here today. And these lands will be managed cohesively by the National Park Service and all of the tribes that are advocating here today. Representative Congressman Raul Ruiz has called upon the president also to use the Antiquities Act to designate the Chuckwalla Monument in the California desert and to protect the lands adjacent to the Joshua Tree National Park, and has introduced legislation to achieve this goal. In talking about honoring the cultural landscape, the lands proposed for protection include the homelands of the Eviatam, the Nuwu, the Pipa Ahamakaw, the Quatsan, and the Marayam. These are the peoples of the Cahuilla, the Chemehuevi, the Mojave, the Quechan, and the Serrano Nation. This is a living landscape and with interconnected cultural, natural, spiritual significance, which sustains the well-being and survival of all of the tribes that are here today. The proposed monument would preserve these cultural landscapes by providing protection to important heritage values tied up in our lands, such as multi-use trail systems established, thousands and thousands of years, sacred sites, the objects that are out there, the traditional cultural places, geoglyphs, petroglyphs, pictographs, plants, and wildlife. These cultural, natural, and spiritual resources are essential to the welfare of regionally affiliated tribes that were mentioned here today. This designation would honor tribal sovereignty and priorities by introducing methods for tribes to steward our own homelands as partners with the federal agencies. The tribes have an opportunity to request co-management and co-stewardship authorities in this proposal and in direct discussions with the Biden administration. These methods of stewardship would allow tribes to input indigenous worldviews, knowledge, and perspectives into the land management. The land management plan would incorporate our knowledge and Western science together to create a more holistic and inclusive approach to protecting the landscapes that we've mentioned today. So again, we have to reiterate that these national monuments that we're talking about today contain thousands and thousands of cultural places and objects that are important to all of the tribes that are here today. So Torres Martinez, again, the Cahuilla, not just Torres Martinez, like I said, when we were a nation before the 1900s, it's not just Torres Martinez. We were divided into 9 different nations, so we're all connected. All of the tribes between here and Colorado are all connected spiritually in life-sustaining ways. So this land, geographical land, provides a foundation for all tribes, our identity, our culture, our traditional knowledge, our religion, our oral traditions, our well-being, our language, and most importantly, our ceremonies and our songs and our dances are all tied to this. So we're talking about the land stewardship. Again, our concept can be applied when we think about we were always one with the environment and the nature, and how all of this is tied to our economics, our health, and our theology. So the specific ask for the Department of Interior and the White House is we specifically intend to co-steward this new national monument with the Department of Interior. Torres Martinez requests that the appropriate language be included in the proclamation to direct the Secretary to establish this. We invite Secretary Holland to come and visit the area so that we can show the beauty and the cultural significance. We'd like to have and continue the government-to-government conversation. Thank you for this conversation today that specifically bring out the cultural values of these monuments that should be managed to protect, and we can all share the information on what and where we protect all the sensitivities that we're mentioning today. Not to mention the wildlife, the habitat, the biodiversity. These areas that are all mentioned today by the tribal leaders are all incredibly rich in biodiversity, and permanently protecting these lands will conserve important wildlife and plant habitat for generations to come, just like they've been for thousands and thousands of years. So some of the habitat that's out there right now is the chuckwalla. So this chuckwalla monument is named after a lizard that is charismatic and fascinating to the natives within the area. It adopts to its surroundings to a degree that each mountain range has its own unique and visually distinctive population. The desert tortoise, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service identified these lands as essential for the continued viability of the imperiled desert tortoise. The desert bighorn sheep, the lands adjacent to the Joshua Tree National Park, are home to the genetically diverse population of the bighorn sheep. The Sonoran pronghorn, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife selected lands within the proposed Chuckwalla National Monument as a reintroduction site for these Sonoran pronghorn. Native plants. The proposed national monument is home to unique native plant species found nowhere else in the world, including the Mecca aster, the Orocopia sage, and the shrub that in the mint family are clusters of small lavender-colored flowers. The Muntz cholla is a cactus which branches stems that can reach heights of over 10 feet. And last but not least, the migratory birds. The migratory birds are the desert woodlands and palm oasis that grow within these monuments provide habitat that are vital to the survival of resident and migratory birds. And all the trees and habitat provide important stopovers along the flight path of birds migrating from Mexico to California. So again, I just want to reiterate again the Torres-Martinez priority and our concern that this needs to be protected. Not only this monument, but the other monuments that were mentioned here today. We're trying to protect what's culturally sensitive and our priority for our generations to come. We thank Secretary for being on. We thank Geneva, everyone that's on here today for the advocacy and getting this word out and getting the monument dedicated as we ask and plead to the President to use the Antiquities Act to designate all of these monuments mentioned here today. So I want to thank everyone. Thomas Torres Jr., the Tribal Council Chairman for the Torres-Martinez Desert Kuya.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chairman, and all of the panelists. I do want to invite everyone to come on screen now. So all the panelists, as well as both deputy secretaries. It's one thing to read about these different national monument proposals, and it's a completely another thing to see these images and to hear these stories and to really put it in the context of the significance around the cultural, spiritual, ecological, geological dimensions, and hear just a little bit more about what it takes to do this. It's not just about having the conversation. It's about holding that vision, bringing forward that leadership voice, finding those right connections across federal, tribal, state, nonprofit, academic, other sectors, private landowners, everyone who's really working together towards this, and then finding the resources to implement these different visions and opportunities as they move forward. So thank you all panelists. I do want to turn it back to both Sarah and Geneva here to dig a little bit deeper into some of the dynamics that are at play as we're pursuing these potential designations across the state. So Geneva, I'm going to turn it back to you, and for our panelists to just invite you to all come on screen and keep your cameras on throughout this discussion period. We'll keep this going until about 10 before the hour, and then we'll have some final remarks and some next steps on what's happening with 30 by 30 across the state as we look ahead to 2024. Geneva?
Thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to our panel conversation. As a friendly reminder, if you have questions for our panelists today, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. But while folks are typing out their questions, I do have a question for all of our panelists. And we would really love to just hear your thoughts and insight on what you think has made this effort successful so far. Would love to hear about the coalitions you've built, the partnerships you've built, but anything else that you think has been successful in the efforts of putting together these national monument proposals.
If you don't mind, Jimmy, I can go on that one. I think for here in Los Angeles and the San Gabriel Monument, the success of it is the collaboration with all the environmental and nature organizations that have a passion and desire for the expansion and the protection of these natural resources. And when they approach the tribes, the inclusiveness of making sure the tribe's voice is at the front of the table. That's the important factor of it. And so I think that's what made it successful and makes it more impactful is the willingness of all the team. And beyond that, to have the Senator Padilla also come in and echo his support behind this expansion, along with Congresswoman Julie Chu and many of the other city and county officials who also came behind it to ensure that they understand the importance of this expansion. So that collective folks and agencies and organizations and governmental has really made an impact for voicing stressing to President Biden that this is an expansion that should occur here in Los Angeles. So I think that's one for us here for San Gabriel Monuments.
I can jump in there a little bit. This is Brandy with Satitla. Yeah, so we actually been we're really excited by 30 by 30 because we've been fighting to protect this area for decades, for literally over 2.5 decades. We've been in litigation to protect these really important waters that I was talking about from geothermal development and from this really fragile and complex aquifer. And I explained like how important this water is. These are pure water resources that we drink directly from. We work with different organizations, and I do water testing out there, and it is just amazing, like the information we get back on this, like these open water sources are the consistency of distilled water, and that's incredible to think of when that there are there's things living in this water, right? So, and doing their thing in the water, and you could still get those amazing numbers back. And so it's really important to protect these waters while they're still pure, and we're just trying to get that message out. And we have a lot of partners in these decades of work leading up to this, and just seeing this pathway four of what we've already been doing is just so in line with what we've been trying to get done and get that message and that education out to folks to how important it is to protect these places. And but the Mount Shasta Bioregional Ecology Center has been our partner for a very long time. The Native Coalition has been our partner for a very long time. The Medicine Lake Citizens for a Quality Environment have been our partners. The sportsmen's organizations such as Trout Unlimited are our partners in this, and we've been building our support base as we've been educating folks, and really people really just don't know and are certainly like amazed when they start learning the facts about these areas, that just haven't been on people's radars. So yeah, so we're just very, very thankful and glad for the support that we've gotten from Governor Gavin Newsom, and also Wade and Geneva and Sarah coming out, and seeing and feeling for yourself how important this place is. Thank you.
Hi, this is Sandy with Tuliomi, and I want to reiterate it's the coalition. I think one of the reasons we've been successful is this really has been led by the Yoshitihi Winton Nation. When the proposal came forward by Congressman Garamendi, they responded. They asked for the renaming. They asked for the co-management requirements, and they have been our leaders and partners every single step of the way, every meeting we've been at, every tour we've given, every strategy session we have. They have been key partners, but also the broad-based coalition we have. Some of the folks are on the call here. We have environmentalists, we have botanists, we have scientists, we have geologists, we have members of the OHV community, we have local government in Lake County and some in Colusa County also, which is a tough county for public lands. The state support has been amazing, and then the support of our champions also. But this has been a groundswell. This started locally and has broadened from there. So this is one of the best coalitions I have ever worked in my entire career. It is an amazing group of people, so dedicated to making this happen and so respectful of the place and appreciating all that it offers. So I really do think it's the community coming together to work for this that really makes it a success.
Yes, I agree. It's the alliance. It's like when we're talking about the initiative of the governor and battling the climate crisis, creating these alliances, these partnerships, right? And when you do that, you have the accumulated knowledge, right? And that's even more forefront when it's community based. When you're talking about the communities inclusive of the tribal communities, I think that's a greater knowledge that the governor is going to have a success in this battle and successful conservancy in his initiative, right? So, and I appreciate these advocacies and the push to get the tribes here to be included. Again, I think it's a synergy that makes everything successful. The continued synergy and the openness in that synergy to have all of the knowledge incorporated in any initiative that has to do with conservancy or this 30 by 30, right? Or protecting the environment against the climate crisis.
Well, thank you, everyone. And it's just so exciting to hear about all the coalitions and the partnerships that have gone into really not only building these proposals, but then advocating for them and keep the work going in such a beautiful direction. So again, just deep appreciation for your all's work in leading that and sharing a bit with us today. Another question that we have for all of the panelists is, what would this potential designation mean to you? It could be personally, culturally, with respect to biodiversity conservation, access, equity. There's a broad list of different aspects to National Monument designation, but really would love to hear, why is this potential designation so important and meaningful to you all?
Well, I guess
I go. Oh,
I'll
go ahead. Go ahead, Brandy. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, it would mean so much. I mean, this literally is, the topography, it's the place, it's the where our creation story is. I mean, that's like everything, for our people. This is a continuously used a place for my people. My daughter that you see in the picture there, she received her name there. Her name is Chapasa, which means hummingbird in our language. So it just means so much. Like we've been trying to find long-term protection solution for this place for like I said, literally decades and beyond in the courts and whatnot, and just defending off. And so it would mean that my children and my children's children wouldn't have to keep on fighting to protect this area just for ourselves and our way of life, but for everybody else that relies on it. And then what's our dream for this place? That means co-stewardship and then co-management of this place, so that it has fire resiliency, that it comes back in line into its natural state that is naturally fire resilient, right? And that just means so much, and so many different ways of how we can be interacting and with the land and the landscape in those ways that benefit us, mentally, physically, spiritually, but also it benefits the land as well and everybody else that relies on it. And there's countless ways for me to, like, there's not enough time for us to go on all the ways that we can engage on that level with co-stewardship and co-management. Thank you so much.
Well said, Brandy, and I agree with you. I think for us here in Los Angeles, one is we're massive in the county. The building, housing, all of that is just sprawled across. So this is a chance to preserve much more of land and to what the governor put in 30 by 30. So Los Angeles is needed to protect and preserve this land in the general purposes. But for the tribe, what it means to us is home. I mean, this is where our creation, as Brandy, you said, creation stories, this is where our origins begin, and there's no other place for it. We can go other spots and other areas, but I know that the DNA of my ancestors is right here, and it runs through the rivers, it runs through the trees, it runs through the native plants and native species that run through it. And I think that's what resonates us to see that if this thing is a fruition to come through, that protection is vital. And the fact that we know that the next generations, 4 generations, 7 generations after me, they're able to go back and see this property the way it was originally intended to be, open and spacious and to enjoy. So stories can continue to be shared underneath an oak tree or by the river, and generations can continue to learn. As Brandon, your photo of your daughter right there by the water. I mean, for us to have those continued stories, it's important. And that's what this means for me, for myself and my families here in the tribe.
I am not a tribal member, but I think one of the most important parts about it for me, and I know the coalition I work with, and Tuliomi especially, is protecting the cultural resources and having the tribes having a say in how the land is managed and how it's protected. We believe that the relationship between Indigenous people and community in place is one that we should emulate and foster. So that is one of the most important parts of it for all of us. But if you've been out there, the place really needs protecting. So it's getting damaged by activities out there, and it's such a special place. And it is a critical link in the monument as a whole. It sits on the eastern side, but it kind of cuts into it. And it really does connect the north to the south in a meaningful way that I think preserves cultural resources, tribal stories and histories, and the biodiversity and the wildlife corridors. Without Moloch Loic, part of it, we're missing an important chunk of that area and the history. So Berryessa it's one of the most linguistically diverse areas for tribal nations in the region, and this is a key part of it. So it puts the piece together. We want to protect more lands always, but it's just such a critical spot. And the idea of having tribal leaders out and leading that charge is really, it's momentous.
Very good. So the importance of the areas in the land, the geographical locations that we're talking about, and all of these monuments is, we always said is cultural, but it is religious. And just to parallel that is, I would hate to say it, but it's like it would be like a church, right? People go to a church and that's sacred to them. It's religious to them. They go there to pray, and they want it to be protected. In the same way, all of the natives that are here today advocating for the land to be protected, that is our church. The geographical locations that we're talking about is our churches, and that's been our sacred place to go and to be one with the environment, to talk with our creator, to talk to our ancestors, for thousands and thousands of years. And that's the only way that I can equate it to put it into perspective that people can understand. And that's what makes it a priority. That's what makes it important to all of the natives that are on here today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take us to our next question. How can people learn more about these efforts and get involved? And Jade Nguyen asks in the chat, what are small everyday things we can incorporate into our interpretive programming that will support expanding and establishing tribally significant monuments throughout the state?
I'll jump in. I don't think I can speak for the tribes on interpretive programming, so I'm not going to try to. But I noticed that every speaker or participant in the monument has provided links to where folks can get more effort. We've had a public listening session. We had 100% positive comments. We're really excited about that. We were honored to have Secretary Holland out here and our congressional champions, but it's not done until the proclamation is signed. So helping build community support, signing petitions, writing letters, writing postcards, sharing with your elected leaders and the president how important these places are to you and how important it is to protect it. And I will say that we can share the importance of all four at once. We don't have to pick one of these. All four should be protected. So I do urge everybody who hasn't supported the other, if you supported one monument, support the other three, because I think that is a critical step to protecting all of these areas.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add to that. We've seen that President Biden has already protected 1.5 million acres through national monument designation. And we're very hopeful that he will do more here in California. But with everything going on, it's hard to keep focus sometimes. So I think the more that this group and this movement can continue to keep the profile and visibility and the importance of this work top of mind for DC partners, for members of Congress, for the president, I think that's really powerful and important. Who else would like to add on this question? Brandy?
Yeah, I just put in the chat, you can visit our website, www.protectmedicineLakeHighlands.org, and then you can sign our petition. And then I'd really echo everything that Sandra just said, all those avenues of advocacy. And then also that, we absolutely support the other tribally led monuments. And it's super important. And just thank everybody for your support and and getting that word out there through all avenues of media and those powers that be, and calling on the president to make these designations. Thank you so much.
It's the same for myself. I mean, I think as what Sandra and Brandy said, I think supporting all these monuments is vital and important for all of Californians. And it really emphasize on the inclusion that the tribes are at the table and continue to be at the table. And one perfect example, I know I was with Chairman Thomas Tortes back in December, and he went to the tribal listening session, and he's a federally recognized tribe. And my tribe's not invited to that. And so that's the president where he has that. So I asked him, I said, as you're there and you're advocating for this monument, make sure that you also, voice our interests and wishes for the San Gabriel monument. And he said, yes, well, I'll do it. And so that's the partnership. And I think so here collaborating among all of us is important, vital to continue to echo every space that we can and every opportunity that we can speak to the president and his cabinet that can make a decision, help them to come to fruition. So definitely that and collaboration is the key piece for success. So of all of our monuments, so that I can continue to stay on. So thank you.
Very good. I think the same. I think if everyone goes to the links that are on the chat today, or even go even further, learn about the Tatavium or Pitt River or Snow Mountain or the Desert Cahuilla. I think we have the ability now with the technology just to Google, look at Wikipedia, look at the the tribes that are here today and the monuments that are here today, and that's the best case scenario. I think is where you can just look up and learn about everything that's talked about on the monuments and all of the tribes that are here today.
Randy, anything to add on this? Okay. We're seeing some questions in the chat, but if you do have any questions for our panelists, please enter those. One question, this is interesting. If Biden approves the monuments, can a future president change the approval? I believe the answer is yes. And we did see President Trump attempt to do this with the Bears Ears National Monument. So the presidential proclamation is intended as a permanent designation, but it is theoretically possible for future presidents to change it. But the work that tribes and others are doing to develop a really substantial objects report provides the substantive basis to sort of protect the designation. A great question on that. There's another question. Any chance of seeing some maps of proposed monument lands during this meeting? I don't think we plan to share the maps, but if you go to the links that participants have shared, you should be able to see not only maps, but also photos. And again, this is the proposal for a monument expansion or designation, but we don't know what the final map could be unless and until the president takes action. Any other questions for our panelists?
I know we received a question also asking about kind of once a proposal is established, what would panelists like to see beyond that protection designation? And I know a good number of our panelists have already talked about interest in co-stewardship or co-management. And I think, Sarah, your mention of Bears Ears serves as a model of like how the federal government has partnered with tribes in a kind of a co-stewardship relationship around a national monument. But was curious if any of the panelists wanted to share a bit more about, after designation, what are you all excited about in the national monuments?
For myself,
Go ahead, Rudy. Sorry.
okay. For myself, I think what most exciting is that I know the Angeles Forest is struggling financially. To really, and like I mentioned, there's so much population here in Los Angeles County and the greater LA. And so a lot of people go up to these mountains and they're in dire need of support for cleanup, trash removal, protection of trails, making sure those trails are in good conditions for people to walk on so they don't become hazardous. So really looking at that designation and how we're going to get to work and how we're going to preserve and how we're able to work with the community and organizations to really enhance the monument and that is in dire need of infrastructure support. So that's where I think we're excited to see, and that we're hopeful that some funding comes this way to really enhance that. So that's what we're looking towards too.
There are two things. Oh, sorry, Brandy, you go first.
Well, the Pitt River Nation has done a lot of work with the historic properties management program document. We'd really like to see that implemented, natural resource protection. I know there's actually a lot of questions and I had and being a panelist here, I can't read them all, but there was a question like, would we be seeing a casino here? Absolutely not. Would never see a casino here. That is totally incompatible with our use of this area. This is a ceremonial use area that we continuously use. And that's why we've been fighting to protect it for so long, because those types of distractions takes away from that sensory experience that is required to engage in these, ceremonial activities that we have up there. We have this what's known as this high quality of silence that you get nowhere. You have these amazing night skies that are very vital and important, and find out about those, because it's this is the type of place that we're talking about. So what we would be liking to see is an emphasis on natural resources, tribal involvement and engagement and employment, and this natural resources protection, service first agreement, so that we can be doing the work on the boots on the ground, because there is a lot, as our forests have been like mismanaged for so long, and like cultural burns have been suppressed, right? Creating like a very bad fire hazard. We've had all these fires around California. It's because of those bad forestry practices, which the forest is coming around to seeing like, oh, okay, we see now. And so that's the kind of things that we're looking forward to engaging and implementing. But there is so much more to that. That's just a little scratching the surface. Thank you, Sandra.
Two things that I think this effort and the leadership of President Biden and Secretary Holland have led to actual on-the-ground discussions about co-stewardship with tribes. The BLM in our area recently signed MOU with the Khoi Nation, and I know they're actively discussing an MOU with the 3 Patwin nations in the region and are having other discussions. Berryessa has 31 federally recognized tribes alone, not to mention state and non-federally or state recognized tribes. And then the other issue is, and this gets to one of the resource questions, they're starting monument management planning at Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument this year. It's really important to have Malak Loyuk part of that, so that we can have these discussions and ensure that cultural resources are protected and the right activities are in the right place in the right time and not in the wrong places. So I think that's really exciting, seeing both of those things go forward.
Thank you so much. And I just want to circle back to the earlier question regarding, can these monuments be de-designated? Several folks in the chat are saying that this is under litigation, but many environmental organizations believe that a monument once designated cannot be de-designated. So I wanted to provide that clarification. And I would just chime in too on the resources question, which we've gotten some questions on that in the chat and also in this discussion. I think many of us who work in this space recognize that, federal lands and federal agencies with respect to land conservation are sort of chronically underfunded. I really see monument designation as an opportunity to raise the profile and visibility of an area that it's in need of and worthy of additional protection and resources, and see in many cases monument expansion or designation as not the end goal, but really a starting point or a midpoint to continue to make the case for additional resources, whether that be philanthropic, state resources, or federal resources. So it's not a mission accomplished type of situation, but it's really an important marker and formal recognition of just how special and important these places are. Any other questions we want to turn to? Sean, I see you coming in.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Sarah and Geneva, for guiding this conversation. What a wonderfully rich discussion around all the different dynamics in play here, from conceptualizing to bringing those coalitions together, to providing that space for discussion with the public, to really engaging in meaningful conversation and dialogue with diverse partners, and what that's resulting in already. So I just want to thank you all for the leadership that you're providing. For our panelists, thank you so much for joining us today to tell your story, to do it so articulately. Each of you guys were so passionate and inspired and articulate in the way that you were telling your story. So thank you for joining us today. And thanks to all the great questions and comments and contributions that were coming in from participants. I feel like we really did use today's webinar to build some shared understanding and knowledge, to hear some inspiring stories, to hear how you could get more involved to support, connect, and advance these conversations, and to think about what this means in your neighborhood and in your landscape and with the partners that you're engaged with. So just a huge thanks to everyone who's joined. We are going to close out just the last 10 minutes here and then get you back to the rest of your day with a couple of just updates and comments from Assistant Secretary Madeline Drake, who's really helping lead the overall 30 by 30 partnership effort on behalf of California Natural Resources Agency. And then we'll close things out. So Madeline, I'm going to turn to you.
Great, thank you, Sean, and hello, everyone. Ooh. Can you hear me okay, Sean? Sorry.
Yeah, you sound great.
Perfect. I got a weird message. Thank you, and hello, everyone. And as Sean said, if you don't know me, my name is Madeline Drake, and I'm the Assistant Secretary for the Biodiversity and Habitat here at the California Natural Resources Agency. I feel so lucky that one of my key responsibilities is in this role is to work with many of you to implement the Pathways to 30 by 30 strategy. And I really appreciate you all joining the conversation today. I also wanted to extend another thank you to our panelists for taking the time to be with us today and share the importance of these 4 national monument proposals. The work that you all are doing in building support and ensuring conservation priorities are locally led is a great example of 30 by 30 in action and helping us add around 1 million acres through Pathway 4. There are so many great questions from the audience in our chat and Q&A, and we tried to get through as many of them as we could. Our team will definitely be reviewing these as well, though, and they're really going to help inform future resources and webinars and things that we can share to really kind of advance 30 by 30 together. Before we end the webinar, I wanted to take a few minutes to share with you how you can stay in touch and our next steps for our 30 by 30 team at the California Natural Resources Agency. Tomorrow, January 18th, from 12 to 1 p.m., Secretary Crowfoot will be hosting a Secretary Speaker Series focused on the new Outdoors for All strategy released this past fall. As many of you know, access is one of the three key objectives of California's 30 by 30 initiative, and we look forward to implementing this strategy as a part of 30 by 30. So if you would like to learn more about that strategy, please join the Outdoors for All discussion tomorrow with Secretary Crowfoot, and I will add a link to that in our chat. For our 30 by 30 team, this spring, we're going to be putting together our annual Pathways to 30 by 30 progress report to update our count towards 30 by 30 goal and share the important progress being made for all 10 of the pathways. Remember, today we just spoke about 1. If you have stories or examples of 30 by 30 in action that you would like to see highlighted in our next annual progress report, I encourage you to share those with us by reaching out via email at californianature@resources.ca.gov. Finally, if you would like to go back and rewatch this webinar or share with your friends and colleagues, a recording of this webinar will be posted on our website at californianature.ca.gov. If you are already signed up for our mailing list, check out our website and sign up today so you can get the latest news and information as well as upcoming events and webinars from our team. So thank you all again for joining us today and being a part of the 30 by 30 partnership. And thanks again to our wonderful speakers and panelists today. We really look forward to connecting with you all again soon. And I'll turn it back over to our facilitator, Sean, for the final word.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Madeline. Really appreciate those insights and updates and additional events to continue to bring this community together to advance along all 10 pathways as we work towards the 30 by 30 goal. Just a final word of thanks to you all. What an inspiring conversation. What a great reminder of how powerful it is to come together to honor and steward the lands that provide us with so much and that really connect us to place and demonstrate California's leadership role in 30 by 30. So thank you all again. Please stay in touch, take care, be well, and we'll see you the next time.